Bear with me for just a second. You know what we kind of decided that we're going to do here is make this episode 4 of SuperFlex SuperFridays, an episode of the SuperFlex Super Show as well, just so that the podcast listeners can get caught up and also see what they're missing every single Friday night. So let me do a quick intro for the podcast. From DynastyLeagueFootball.com and a DLF family, a podcast. It's me. It's that old SFD roaming the streets of Superflex City, and this is the SuperFlex Super Show. That's right. Back live on a SuperFlex Super Friday night for an Ask Me Anything episode, mailbag episode. We've been this is episode number 4. We've the previous 3, we had a lot of fun. We've got a lot of great questions. We've talked about a lot of Superflex topics, player values, ADP, trades, strategy. I love talking strategy. That's my jam. I don't know if you noticed, but I actually did a podcast episode last night with my good friend Paul Becerra. And he asked me, do you consider yourself more analytics? Do you consider yourself more film? And I said, you know what? I'll be honest. I don't get it with either of them. It's not that I don't get the appeal. I just can't make it work for me. You know, I don't see what other people see using that, using those methods. For me, I thrive on narratives. I can use analytics. I can use film. Like I know what I'm, you know, I can see what I'm looking for. Just getting it to translate is not always the easiest thing. So for me, you know, narratives, that's a big part of my analysis. And more than anything, it's just strategy. Very strategic. Now I can talk analytics with you. I can talk film with you, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, this is for all of us. This is our night to talk super flex, get all super flexy. And, so whatever you want to talk about, we'll do it. I'll do my best. If you ask me about analytics, I'm going to do my best, to sound like I'm not a complete idiot. But honestly, if you want data-driven analysis, go talk to my man, Peter Howard. If you want some film broken down, man, there's kind of a bunch of them. I don't know. Who's your go-to for film analysis? I've got kind of a lot of them that I trust quite a bit. Jake Anderson and Zach Reed are probably the two who have always been kind of my go-tos. But yeah, there's plenty of them around the community and here at DLF in particular. So, but anything strategy, man, I'm right there. I'm like, I'll insert myself into a conversation like none other when it comes to Superflex strategy. So anyways, yeah, let's, one other house cleaning thing here. I'm going to do my absolute best. And maybe we need to make a drinking game out of this. I'm going to try my best not to say, you know, or you know what I mean? Like I got a comment last week about how I say that too much. So, I mean, it's harder than it looks. Take my word for that, but
drink.
Damn it. Yeah, it could be a long night. But yeah, I'm gonna try my best to try and filter those out and make that a stated goal of mine in this episode. And do it enough times, we create a new habit, and and away we go. So yeah, let's talk Superflex. What do we got going on? What's the big news? Josh Allen gets a contract extension. Justin Jefferson got hurt. Looks like it wasn't quite as bad as as we expected. Man, I today I kind of pointed out that to me, Justin Sullivan, what's up, my man? Yeah, open 24 hours. Hey now. I had I tweeted out, and we can talk about this too. I did a rankings update, first one since June, so they were kind of on my ass about that, which is fair. We need to keep those a little bit more up to date. But to me, you're going to get a lot more rankings updates now that we've got actual, drink. Now that we've got actual, movement on the field. Damn it, I did it again. I can't say this sentence without it. Now that we've got actual action on the field, you're going to start to see a lot more rankings updates. It's so hard in the offseason to be making adjustments to player rankings when nothing is actually happening. This is going to be way harder than I thought it would be. Anyways,
we're at 5. Do you want me to keep a counter at the bottom?
Please don't. This is going to be really depressing. But yeah, a lot more rankings updates coming now that we've got actual football. As of last night, by the way, we've got football from now until February. Every single week from now until February. That is a good thing. Let's get to some questions. Justin's got one, and Guillermo's got one. Justin Sullivan, with the glorious news of Josh Allen's extension, how do you incorporate contracts into your rankings and values? And I don't know. So I haven't seen a structure of this thing yet. I do think that you have to take it into consideration a little bit, but I mean, typically these big contract extensions, especially with the type of years, is that 6? I think that's 6. With the years that he got, I think that you do have to consider that a little bit. I think that you have to look at these younger players and say, say they're really kind of committing to these guys long term. You can kind of plan on it. So we always talk about you play in a 3-year window, right, in Dynasty. And I do the same thing, but what I will say is when I'm looking at quarterbacks in particular, it's not about it's not about having that guy for 6 years, 12 years, whatever it is, 10 years, I guess, 12 years left for Pat Mahomes, something like that. It's not about the fact that I'm planning on rostering that player. It's not that I'm planning on rostering Josh Allen for the entire 6 years of that contract. I'm still operating in that 3-year window. But I do think that we should consider the fact that we are going to have that player beyond that 3-year window. What happens when that 3-year window is up? We kind of start on the next 3-year window, I suppose. And the fact that Josh Allen is still going to have the exact same value 3 years from now that he has right this moment, I think is important. I mean, it's important for our values, and it's important to to consider that when you're doing a startup, consider that when you're making a trade, consider the fact that you get to start that next 3-year window with the same type of value at the quarterback position that you had, 3 years prior, essentially. This, thing is almost out the window completely already. Guillermo, we've gone international, dude. Hello from Honduras. That is so awesome.
I started listening to the show International, my man.
Is that right?
I first started listening to the show when I lived in Dubai.
That's the voice of Captain Redbeard, and I had no idea.
Yeah, man.
That you were from the Middle East.
I'm from South Carolina. I worked in Dubai for those 2 years. And
Oh,
I did
okay.
a lot of podcast listening over there.
I was like, you do not look like, and you don't talk like you're from Dubai either. So, but no, that is freaking awesome. Yeah, we're traveling the globe and getting all super flexy from one corner of this spinning rock to the next. I like it. All right, Nick to me too. I wonder if I said that right. It's that's one of those plays on words, man. Just like Captain Redbeard with his big Tabowski. Startup SuperFlex Dynasty. I have Trevor Lawrence, Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, debating on Darren Waller, DeAndre Hopkins, Javonte Williams, or Terry McLaurin. No quarterbacks left. That's always going to be my first question. Like, what quarterbacks can we still get? Can we build up that quarterback depth a little bit? But if those are the guys that you're really kind of set on, which is totally fine. We always say, go all in on your best ideas, go all in on your best strategies, go all in on what you know and what you want to do. So if these are the guys that you're really looking at, I think for me, it's probably going to be Javonte Williams. I think that you're building right now a team that is going to be set to compete right away. And that's part of why I say, I would also consider quarterback. But if you're not going to do it here, that's totally fine. Just wait another, round or two. But I would definitely look to add a couple more. But yeah, I think that this is going to be, especially I always look first at the running back position, and I say, is this a team that's gonna? That's the whole key right there. Is what do the running backs look like? Because running back is really kind of a 1-year proposition, and especially when you get to guys like Kamara, like Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, guys like that. Those are really kind of all in pushes, when you start getting running backs like that, and when you start putting together running back depth, because we kind of acknowledge that you're going to have to look again at the running back position as soon as the season's over, right? So this is kind of you're kind of saying, this is my window. This is where I want to go for it. This is where I want to go get a championship. So what I think that it really kind of takes to win in year one is a lot of running back depth. And not only that, I don't talk nearly enough about this, but the running back wave attack, you really kind of want, you want not only running back depth, but the SuperFlex flywheel calls for a lot of running backs. The majority of your roster is going to be running backs. But you also want guys who are going to kind of hit at different times. The idea is in week 1, Alvin Kamara is going to be perfectly healthy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be perfectly healthy. And, those guys are probably going to kind of carry you. As long as you've got a baseline score from the quarterback position, those running backs can kind of carry you. Well, what happens in week 5? What happens in week 7, week 8, week 10, week 13 and beyond? And then when we get to the fantasy playoffs, because you think about the running back position and what their job description is, it's brutal. It's vicious. It's violent, and it's just hard on the human body to do what they do week in and week out. And they're running into the line. Every single play that they touch the ball ends in a vicious collision of some kind, usually with a player who's bigger than they are, unless they're Derrick Henry. And they're doing it 20, 30 times a game, so it kind of stands to reason that guys like Alvin Kamara going to have all the energy, be well rested, be ready to go for week 1. But by week 7, maybe he's kind of slowed down a little bit. Maybe he's even, not available. Maybe he's injured with hopefully a smaller injury that only keeps him out a week or two. We almost have to plan on that, though. at the running back position. We almost have to plan on the idea that these guys are going to miss some time every single season. And so we want some running backs who are going to be, they're going to be stepping into that same type of role right around the time that Alvin Kamara is starting to slow down a little bit. We want to get to that next wave of running backs. Well, to me, Javonte Williams is a great example of this. I kind of think that Javonte Williams, as good as he's looking right now in training camp, I don't think that he's going to be a major factor in week 1. And, normally, like a lot of times, dynasty players, fantasy players will take that as an indictment on him. To me, that's awesome. That's what we want. We want some of those guys. We want some guys who are going to be week 1. We want those first wave guys. And then we want some guys who are going to slowly build up their workload. And, around, after the first quarter, first third of the season, these guys are going to start to step in and take over a lead role for their own teams. Javonte Williams seems like that type of guy to me. I think it kind of starts off as a little bit of a committee. And I think that he slowly starts to pull away. And then somewhere in the, in the middle to, late half of the season, you're going to start to see a bell cow type of workload for Javonte Williams. And, I think that there are a lot of guys like that. Chase Edmonds is another great one. If you already have that first wave really kind of covered, Chase Edmonds, Travis Etienne, I think, could be another one who kind of takes some time to take over that role. Handcuff guys, lots of those handcuff guys. Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison. Chuba Hubbard is my absolute favorite. To me, he's the best handcuff in the league. So it's all just kind of on the off chance that those guys actually can get on the field. But you just want that wave of players, that wave of running backs. You want that second wave, and even start looking for the third wave, the guys late in the season who need an injury or two to take on that type of role. So, that's kind of my approach to running backs. I think that you're well on your way with that group. So, really, the really, really long version here. Let's just condense it real quick and just say I would go Javonte Williams to give yourself a start on that second wave of running backs as you go after a championship this year. All right, back to Guillermo in Honduras. I love that. I love that this is an international show. That's just so cool to me. What is the legendary quarterback extreme strategy? QBX. #QBX. So, yeah, I've been kind of teasing this every episode, but not really getting into it for those, just for those who are already familiar. I don't want to bore anyone. I don't want to be redundant, but for those who aren't familiar, I think this is super important. And, this just plays so much into my personal strategy. I mean, this is my personal strategy. And having this, kind of this frame of reference, I think, is super important. So quarterback extreme is my SuperFlex Dynasty startup strategy. I actually use it in redraft too, come to think of it. But the idea is we want a minimum of 5 quarterbacks. And so if you go to dynastyleaguefootball.com, look at our SuperFlex ADP, you see that the starting NFL quarterbacks really kind of dry up by the 10th round. Maybe they last to the 13th round. Out of a 20-round startup draft, they're gone about halfway through. When right around the 10th round, you start getting into the guys like, Lockwater, True Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, the guys who, where they're both going in the same round because nobody knows who's going to be the starter there. Jimmy Garoppolo kind of goes in that range. Andy Dalton goes in that range. So those bridge guys. So, Tyrod Taylor goes in that range. just because we don't know what to do with him. But the guys who are going to be locked in NFL starters for the entire season are typically gone by the 10th round, which means if we want 5 of them, and by the way, a big part of this is I define a quarterback when we're talking about him in this context. I define a quarterback as an NFL starter. Mitchell Trubisky's not a quarterback anymore. I'm sure that's news to him, and it's not going to hit quite the way he would like. But the reality is, I mean, the guy ahead of you had a borderline MVP season and just got a 6-year, $150 million contract extension. So you're not getting on the field, man. You're not a quarterback. You're keeping the bench from floating away. Sorry to tell you. So we're looking for guys who are locked in NFL starters. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about quarterbacks. And I want 5 of those guys. So it's an early and often approach. And the only reason that I do it early, you don't necessarily need elite quarterbacks. There is some truth to the idea that, quarterbacks score similarly on a weekly basis. But we start early just because, it's not necessarily to get the elite guys. It's just because we want the runway to be able to get those 5 quarterbacks and still be able to put together at least some semblance of balance on the rest of our roster so that we've got players at the other positions who can support those quarterbacks. So I start in the first round. A typical QBX draft for me looks like 3 quarterbacks through the first 4 rounds. So I've got my first 3. Usually what it is first round quarterback, second round quarterback, third round is usually going to be my running back 1. And I take a little bit of a hero RB approach from there, or modified zero RB, whatever you want to call it. But that kind of goes along with QBX a little bit. But I like to get that first running back right there. And then I'll come back with another quarterback usually. And then either a running back or a wide receiver, a tight end if there is a tight end premium. And then by the 10th round, I want that 5th quarterback. So, you're usually going to see one of the elite guys, somebody in the neighborhood of, if I'm at 101, I end up with Pat Mahomes, obviously. But, if you're looking more just kind of in the middle, like late middle part of the first round, it's probably, I end up reaching past Christian McCaffrey. I reach past Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook and Saquon Barkley and those wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf. I reach past all those guys to make sure that I still get my quarterback, because I just want to make sure that I get the 5 that I want. And, so it'll end up being somebody like Trevor Lawrence, like Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson. Those are kind of some later first round guys, and I'll still take them. And it feels like a reach. It feels like a reach to take Joe Burrow instead of Christian McCaffrey, but that's what it takes to get to those 5 without putting myself in a position to make some major reaches later. So, you'll end up with somebody like Joe Burrow, maybe Ryan Tannehill in the second round. Sometimes Aaron Rodgers is still available in the middle of the second round. That's my personal favorite. Get that running back 1, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, somebody like that, somebody in that range. And then come back with Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, guys like that as my 3rd. The 4th is usually somewhere in the range of Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold. And then that 5th one is probably going to be a little bit of a lotto ticket type of guy. Sometimes I'll even take 2 of them just to complete a quarterback situation, a quarterback position for an NFL team. So Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, for instance, that could be my 5th quarterback. The combination of the 2 kind of creates that 5th one. So something like that. That's kind of quarterback extreme. People often, and I've done it before, I've gone beyond 5 just because people are letting them fall. People take the one quarterback mentality into SuperFlex startups all the time. And so, sometimes you do feel like you have to just take advantage of it. They think that they think that you're just going to stop. They think you're going to stop taking quarterbacks at some point, and then they're going to be able to just clean them up. Well, here's the thing. We always say the cheapest you'll ever get a quarterback is in a startup draft. And the reason for that is the startup draft is the one time that they're available to everybody. Once a startup is over, they're all on rosters, and you don't have, equal opportunity to get that player anymore. So the only way to do it is with a trade. And if I'm the only player in the league who has enough quarterbacks to be able to complete a trade, guess what that does to the price of that quarterback, regardless of who the quarterback is. I'm making you pay for him. You should have took him in a startup, and you didn't, and now you get to pay my price, which is going to be basically a blank check. So you can do that. You can take advantage of the value. We know that the value is immense for quarterbacks in SuperFlex Dynasty. But for me, the real reason to do it is to ensure that we've got a quarterback at the SuperFlex position at all times. That means even through bye weeks, even in the event of injuries, and that we're not involved in those massive waiver runs where we're throwing a ton of fab at, Andy Dalton when he becomes the starter for the Dallas Cowboys, or, even later in the season when, Brandon Allen and Ryan Finley all of a sudden are starting quarterbacks. We don't want to have to throw a bunch of fab at those guys. We would much rather, spend a little bit of fab here and there on running backs and wide receivers who are going to help us. So, again, quarterbacks are cheapest in the startup. So let's get them there. It's about that. It's about, making sure I've got a quarterback at SuperFlex at all times. And then it's also about the ability to play matchups, to have options on a weekly basis, which just raises your baseline score. It raises the upside of your lineup to be able to bench. Russell Wilson's got, in week 15, Russell Wilson's got the LA Rams, best defense in the league, right? We don't want to have to just settle for whatever score he's going to be able to get. He's notoriously bad late in the season. And that's the best defense in the league. We don't want to just accept a low score from him. Instead, now we've got options, and we've got Kirk Cousins going up against Detroit, the absolute worst defense in the league. Best matchup possible for a quarterback. Absolutely nobody to stop Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So we're going to bench Russell Wilson. We're going to put in Kirk Cousins, and all of a sudden our baseline score just jumped from, whatever 10 points that you were likely to get from Russell Wilson all the way up to 30, 35, 40 points that you could potentially get from Kirk Cousins. So that's the real reason to do it, in my opinion. But essentially that's still kind of a condensed version. I could talk forever about Quarterback Extreme. It's so fun. I'm so passionate about it. But anyways, that's what Quarterback Extreme looks like. Really appreciate the question, by the way, Guillermo. I've been looking for 4 weeks now for an opportunity to really lay that out. Bill Scully, what's up, bud? George Kittle, Darren Waller in the late second, or TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts in the early fourth. Redraft, PPR, no tight end premium. No tight end premium kind of kills that one for me. I think I'm going to wait until the fourth for Hawkinson and or Pitts. Hawkinson or Pitts. Kittle and Waller, I mean, we always do talk about, particularly Travis Kelce is that's the only way to just create the perfect lineup, right? Is with Travis Kelce, probably George Kittle, maybe even Darren Waller. But if you don't have a premium, I mean, everybody's just really kind of living the same life at tight end, except for the guy who's got Travis Kelce, the person who has Travis Kelce, the player who has Travis Kelce. But it's pretty easy to counterfeit Travis Kelce's scoring with a wide receiver, with a running back, and certainly with a top end, with a quarterback in a great matchup. Doesn't have to be top end quarterback, but in a premium matchup, you can absolutely, the combination of TJ Hawkinson and then, back to that example of Kirk Cousins against those Detroit Lions, that combination is going to more than make up for the advantage gained by having Travis Kelce without some kind of premium. So yeah, let's wait on tight end as long as we can. I'll be honest with you, Scully, I might even wait a little bit longer. I might even wait beyond the 4th round with no tight end premium. Hascom 316. Hey, Kyle Senra, what's up, man? Good to see you. Glad to have you here. Hascom 316. Great content. Thanks, man. Let's see. What do we got? Cook injury. Cook injury history. Saquon might not start till week 3. I forgot to bring that up at the top. That's pretty big news. That had Twitter buzzing this morning. Alvin Kamara will be affected by the quarterback situation. He was last year, so it stands to reason. Yeah, definitely. Who are your top running backs? Saquon is still the guy to me, and I get it that the not having him for the first 2 weeks of the season is a tough pill to swallow, especially if you're taking him in the, in a SuperFlex league, you're probably taking him in the late 1st, early 2nd round, something like that. So, he's still 101 to me. I get that it doesn't feel great to use that type of draft capital on a guy that you've got to wait a couple weeks for. The thing is, to me, like I said earlier, you just think about the job description of the running back position. These guys are all likely to miss some time. Now, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes they're able to stay healthy for the entire season. But the most likely scenario is this, the job that they're tasked with is going to wear them down to a point where they're going to miss some time. Saquon Barkley just misses it in weeks 1 and 2 instead of weeks, 7 and 8 or whatever. So, and there's still the potential that you still get some missed time from him. We always see compensatory injuries coming off of the ACL. There's that as well. But, to me, he just, he's worth the wait. I don't know of a more graceful way to say it. He's just a prototypical running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's elusive. He's powerful. It's just, the guy was just built to play running back, and the running back position was really kind of developed so that Saquon Barkley has a role in the NFL that makes perfect sense for him. So, I think Christian McCaffrey still is a pretty safe bet. I think that, I think that we have to take some of that, the injury stuff. I think we have to take that with a grain of salt a little bit. Dalvin Cook really stayed pretty healthy in 2020, so I'm not too worried about that. A lot of his injuries, by the way, were kind of isolated events. Back to those compensatory injuries that we see with after coming off of an ACL tear. It was really kind of what essentially happened in 2018 was the torn ACL for Dalvin Cook. 2019, a lot of missed time due to those compensatory injuries. So you're really kind of still saying that's still the ACL injury acting up, essentially, And then, by 2020, fully healed, and he plays most of the season, if not all of it. I can't remember exactly, but he was, the injuries really didn't affect him all that much. So I guess you could look at guys like, Aaron Jones is in a great situation, still relatively healthy. Most of that offense returns. Austin Eckler, love Austin Eckler's abilities. You can look at some of the rookies who, there's less wear and tear on their bodies at this point. Najee Harris coming in, he can take on a huge workload. And he hasn't been taking the type of damage to his body that a lot of these guys have in previous seasons because he hasn't been in the NFL. So Joe Mixon is one that I really like. I know that injury history plays in, but again, I think that we kind of have to take some of that with a grain of salt and just say, you know what, the running back position is a treacherous one. That's kind of all there is to it. So we can't really hold it against these guys when they get hurt because they all do it. It's kind of the nature of the position. So I don't worry too much about the injury history. I think that it can shorten their career expectancy from here. And that's something to consider in Dynasty. But the reality is we just see turnover at the running back position every single season for a variety of reasons. You really kind of have to readdress the running back position every single season as if it's redraft anyways. So let's just look for the guys that we think can make it, who can help us win this season. And then in 2022, we'll tackle 2022. So yeah, for me, those guys are, the injury histories don't really compel me all that much, if I'm being honest. I'm all in on Jalen Hurts in San Francisco. Open 24 hours says, or in SuperFlex. Sorry, not San Francisco. How do you feel about him this year and for Dynasty? Rumors are Watson to Eagles. Do you think Watson gets traded this year? I do think Watson gets traded. I don't know that it's necessarily to the Eagles. That seems like the most likely scenario at this point. That seems like the only scenario at this point. I love Jalen Hurts' skill set. I think he's very underrated as a passer. And then we know what that rushing upside can do in fantasy football. So I would be really bummed to see Deshaun Watson traded to the Eagles, especially if Jalen Hurts doesn't go back to Houston in return. I kind of think that he would go on to Houston as part of that deal. That's the good news. I kind of think that you probably get Deshaun Watson and, maybe one of those backups, one of their million backup quarterback, get Jeff Driscoll, just throw him in so he can help carry Deshaun Watson's suitcase or something. I think that you could see a move like that with Jalen Hurts coming back to Houston. It's still not a slam dunk, though, that Jalen Hurts gets an opportunity to start for the Houston Texans, unfortunately. I would love to see it. I think that he's better than Tyrod Taylor. I think he's better than Davis Mills. I question whether or not they would be willing to make that type of move this late in the offseason. I would not be surprised to see the Eagles make a move for Deshaun Watson. I just, from there, I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where Jalen Hurts, is a week one starter in the NFL. Unfortunately, I would love to see it. I'm kind of staying away from him for the moment, though, just because of that. I think he's a hold if you already have him, but I don't think that I'm not willing to sell even at the, or I'm not willing to buy. Sorry, even at the discounted value. Justin's also drinking for every Josh Allen contract mention. So yeah, you're gonna You're gonna get just as drunk. What else we got, Captain? I'm gonna let you do this.
John.
I know. I'm just like undoing everything you're doing. Just trying to do your job for you, trying to get you fired or something.
I'm gonna have to talk to the boss.
Monty, I was actually thinking about mentioning to you, he wasn't taking it seriously, but now I get it. Don't like it, but I see your strategy. Because he's
In
currently
reference
in
to
our,
the mock, yeah.
in our August DLF mock drafts. We just started the mock drafts to formulate the SuperFlex ADP available at dynastyleaguefootball.com. So let's see. Talking international, there's football tonight. CFL. Really? I mean, that it can't like that. I bet I would much rather sit down and watch a CFL game and, try and understand some of the rules than sit there and watch, the Pittsburgh Steelers slam Najee Harris into the line against the Cowboys in Canton, Ohio, 30 freaking times. That game, and I've actually got it up on the TV right now, the replay of it, and it's just as boring now as it was yesterday. So, Kyle. All right, Kyle. SuperFlex dude. Do you view the dynasty quarterback landscape as a clear top 12? No, not really. I don't think so. I mean, I guess I would. Let's let me look at the quarterback position from an ADP standpoint. See what we've got is the current top 12, and see if there's room for anybody else. My guess is that the answer is going to be yes. So we've got Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill. So what is that? 7, 8, 9, 10.
Trey Lance is up at 11 above Tannehill.
Yeah, Trey Lance, Ryan Tannehill. So the guys that are outside the top 12 include Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa. Deshaun Watson outside the top 12 already kind of breaks this down for me, Zach Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins. And again, I mean, this is just ADP. Tom Brady's outside the top 12. And there's admittedly a difference between ADP and how we think they're going to finish in terms of fantasy scoring, right? Back to the rant last week about how, there's a difference between ADP and value. I mean, this really kind of illustrates that. Trevor Lawrence ahead of Russell Wilson. That's purely based on career expectancy, right? Trey Lance ahead of Ryan Tannehill, Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is going to run circles around Trey Lance in 2020 or 2021. It's not going to stay that way forever. I mean, probably starting as soon as 2022, Trey Lance is the better asset to have. But, it just kind of illustrates the fact that ADP, a lot more goes into ADP than value. In fact, value plays a very small role in it. So, yeah, I mean, but as far as just in terms of ADP, I think that there's plenty of room for some of that. I think that, I mean, I hate to say it, but like at some point, Aaron Rodgers, my guy, Aaron Rodgers, at some point he drops out of the top 12. It's going to happen. It shouldn't happen anytime soon necessarily, but at some point we're going to get there. I mean, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, like these are all guys who I don't think it's a slam dunk that they finish as top 12 guys. Lamar Jackson finishes quarterback 11, so we've still got him inside the top 5 just based on upside. So I think that, yeah, it's especially once you get outside of the top 5 or 6, I think it gets very fluid. I think there's a lot of room. And I think that there are going to be some guys who surprise us. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa, that's one of my favorites this season. Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones, actually. That's kind of our version of a sleeper with that 6th round ADP. I think Daniel Jones has the potential to sneak into the top 12 of quarterback finishes. And I think that there's going to be room for him. So we see guys like that all the time, sneak into the top 12. So I think that there's going to be room in that bottom 6, in basically 7 through 12. I think that there's room there. Let's see. How'd I do? Lamar says, I traded Nick Chubb in a second for Najee Harris. I would like to see the second on the other side. I think that Nick Chubb should have more value than Najee Harris. And you should have a plus on the Najee Harris side than the Nick Chubb side. But that being said, I mean, if you're a Steelers fan, if you're a Najee Harris believer, if you're an Alabama fan, whatever it is, I think that it makes perfect sense to pay up just a little bit. A 2nd round pick isn't a huge amount. It's not a gross overpay, regardless of which side that ends up on. It's not a huge tax to have to pay. So if that's your guy, love it. I'm like I said earlier, go all in on your best ideas, go all in on your best strategies. If Najee Harris is your guy, if you've got that gut feeling that Najee Harris is going to be, he's got top 5 type of upside this season, and you don't think Nick Chubb does, then I think that it's a perfectly acceptable price to pay.
Those guys are only one spot off in the ADP and DLF rankings for reference.
Is that right? Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Nick Chubb is RB7 and Najee Harris is RB8.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that makes it that much better for you. But, I mean, I do think that when we're talking about those top, couple tiers of any position, honestly, but especially at running back and especially at quarterback, going from one to the next, even if it is just that one spot move, I think that it should probably take more than a second, to really just to kind of break up the inertia and motivate people to make a move. Like for me, if I was offered, even if the second was on the other side, and I've got Nick Chubb, and I'm offered Najee Harris in a second, if I don't have strong feelings either way, a 2nd round pick just isn't enough to motivate me to do anything, to make a move. So yeah, I mean, if you were able to get your guy without, giving up kind of that agitator type of draft value to do it, I think it's a good move. Guillermo, Ryan Fitzpatrick or Heineke. Why did I just forget his first name? Taylor Heineke. We've been kind of talking a lot about those guys on Twitter the last couple days. I mean, I think the real answer is you want them both. To me, if you have to choose between them, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that he's the guy who gets the start. Shout out to my friend Swags at Swagzilla0G, but because he was talking about the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick has played an entire 16 game season 3 times in his 16-year career, and so that we can't really expect for that to happen again. For him to play the entire season. Now, I think that there's some context there. The last couple stops, he's been, kind of a bridge type of guy. Last year it was Tua, in the year before, and prior to that it was Jameis Winston, and like he's kind of been in that situation where that he's going to come off the field. Like that's kind of his role, is to just kind of hold it down, and he does it well. Particularly for fantasy purposes. It doesn't always translate to NFL wins, and that might be the damning part for him. But anyways, especially when you've got the number 3 pick in the NFL draft waiting behind you to take over, that he's not going to play the entire season. That's why he's there, is to not play the entire season. He's there just to play until Tua is ready to start, right? So I don't know that it's necessarily fair to say that he was unable to finish this season. I know that he dealt with some injuries, but I mean, it was really about just hold this down, keep us moving forward until we're ready to move on to Tua. So that's kind of why he ended up missing some time in 2020. And that's just kind of one example of many. So yeah, I think that this is a different situation. I don't think you necessarily have to get Taylor Heinicke onto the football field. I think that they saw some pretty intriguing stuff at the end of 2020. I think, they would probably like to get a better look before they make a decision on how they want to approach the 2022 offseason. But I don't think that they have to. I think they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick with the idea that, he's a veteran player who can, really kind of manage this team, who can drag us to some wins when we need him. And, we've got the roster here to compete. So he keeps us competitive. And if he doesn't, then we bring in Taylor Heinicke to take a look at him. But I don't think you necessarily have to. If Ryan Fitzpatrick is winning games, I think that you're going to see Ryan Fitzpatrick, up until it stops making sense for Ryan Fitzpatrick to be on the field instead of Taylor Heinicke. But that point doesn't necessarily have to come. So, yeah, I would go with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's a week 1 guy, and he's going to have all the leash in the world. It's really going to come down to, can he keep us competitive in this division? And as long as he's doing that, he's going to be the one on the field. Mike Washington, SuperFlex startup 12 team. First pick, who you got? Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Kyler Murray? So it's funny, I've got those 3 are my top 4, I believe. I just did a rankings update today. We could totally talk about that later. But anyways, so for me, Pat Mahomes is the easy 101. I kind of talked about this last week, but I don't remember how far I went into it. So I'll just rehash it just because. So I was kind of looking at points per game, points scored, how the quarterbacks actually scored. Because I feel like the average points per game, I think that we misuse that a little bit. We don't look enough at how often did they actually hit that number, or how often were they at least close to that number, if not above that number. We don't look at that quite enough. And so I was looking more at, like, what's a good quarterback number for each compartmentalized week, rather than what did this guy do on average? Because Baker Mayfield averaged 13 points per game, almost 14 points per game. How often was he actually around 14 points? I mean, it was like he had a couple monster games late in the season, and beyond that, like a bunch of duds, like way more duds than, those stud games. And so I was kind of looking at that, and I was wondering too, what type of score do we need in order to keep us competitive, in a given week, essentially. So what I basically did is I looked at what was the average score of a starting NFL quarterback for the season, for the 2020 season. And it came out to about 17 points a game. And then I looked individually, each individual week. What was the average score of a quarterback this week? So what did it take to be an average quarterback in week 5, in week 8, in week 13? What did it take to do that? The only guy who was consistently at or above average every single week, well, except for one, it was Pat Mahomes. I mean, he's just so consistent. You're not always getting 40-point games. People think that you're getting just monster games from him all the time. It really doesn't happen that often. But what he does do is he keeps you somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 points to 20, to 25 points almost every single week. There's only one week where he didn't do it. It was against my Denver Broncos, and the Kansas City Chiefs beat them 43-10, I believe. There was a kick return for a touchdown, a long run by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and a interception return for a touchdown. Any one of those 3 touchdowns goes to Pat Mahomes, and he makes his week. We got 15 out of 15 weeks from Pat Mahomes. Like that, it's just elite level, consistency. It's just so bankable that he's going to be one of the top, 16 quarterbacks every single week. So, and generally he's going to be in the top 12 for you as well. So he's really the one guy that you never bench. Back to quarterback extreme, where we're trying to play matchups. We're trying to cherry pick matchups at the quarterback position. And we want to get comfortable with the idea that sometimes you bench Kyler Murray because he's got a bad matchup. Sometimes you bench Josh Allen in a bad matchup. Sometimes you bench Aaron Rodgers, as much as it feels like blasphemy for me to say that. But, sometimes you do it because they're in a bad matchup and you don't want to accept, a below average score from them. And Pat Mahomes is the one guy who doesn't ever put you in that situation. Pat Mahomes is the one guy that you just lock him in. He changes the numbers on quarterback extreme, where I want 5 quarterbacks so I can make those weekly decisions at both the quarterback and the SuperFlex position. If I've got Pat Mahomes, I only need 3 more quarterbacks, because those 3 quarterbacks are going to be, I'm trying to choose between those 3 at the SuperFlex position every week. Whereas, if I don't have Pat Mahomes, then, both positions are up for grabs, both quarterback and SuperFlex. But with Pat Mahomes, you put him in at quarterback 1, and then you just try and figure out SuperFlex week to week. So yeah, I've got him ranked first overall. I've got him ranked as quarterback 1. I've got him ranked first overall. And not only that, I put him in a tier all by himself at the very top of the player pool. And then from there, it goes Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen for me is how I have it ranked. But yeah, Pat Mahomes is just on an island, man. If you've got a chance to get Pat Mahomes, I think you do it.
You still have Aaron Rodgers that high in Dynasty.
third overall. The most likely outcome. Listen, man. All right, AJ, here's the thing. Aaron Rodgers has been the quarterback 1 overall 4 times in his career. No one else has done that. But he's also been quarterback 2 overall 3 times in his career. Of all his seasons where he played the entire season healthy, he's never been outside the top 12. He's been a quarterback 1 11 times in his 16-year career when he's able to stay completely healthy. And more times than not, he's one of the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks. He's the consistency on where we're talking about consistency for Pat Mahomes on a weekly basis. The consistency of Aaron Rodgers on a season by season basis is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. You couldn't wait
He beat me to it.
The two of you you guys, you know what, get a room. It was just like you were just waiting for somebody to say it. Yeah, point out how old he is. And Justin Sullivan's right there for you. I'm so happy for you guys. But
At what
I had
point?
to hear.
At what point does the age and retirement and unhappiness factor in, though? Because he does have the track record. He is one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
At what point is he's 10 years older than everybody else going to affect it? Because Brady has also competed at the high level, and his age tanked roughly not too long after where Aaron Rodgers is age-wise now. I mean, he's proving everybody wrong. He's a high-end QB2, low-end QB1 at times. But where do you gauge that?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great point. What I would say is I think that Tom Brady is proof that we worry too much about age. With quarterbacks, that's the funny part to me. We worry about it with the quarterback position, but not the running back position. You know, nobody's knocking down Alvin Kamara. Nobody's knocking down Dalvin Cook. They're, going into their 5th season. Derrick Henry going into a 6th season. Zeke Elliott going into his 6th season. Nobody's saying, man, that's a lot of time at the running back position. They've put in a lot of time. They've taken a lot of damage to their body. They've gotten a lot of usage. At what point do they hit that cliff? At what point do they turn into Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell? At what point does that happen where they just kind of fade away? And the reality is, I mean, they're there. They're right there at the edge. It's a 1-year proposition with these running backs. Maybe they give you another year, but you can't just assume that. We can't assume that these guys are, that they're still going to be just as fantasy relevant 5 years in as they were, as rookies, as second-year running backs. But we never talk about that. We never talk about it with the running back position because I think that we do just kind of accept that it's a 1-year proposition at running back, and every year that you get from that guy on top of it is bonus. We don't really talk about that. It's just kind of implied, but I think that we should be approaching the quarterback position the exact same way. I really do. I think that we should be looking at these guys and saying, if I get another top 2 season from Aaron Rodgers in 2021 and then he retires, that's still valuable because that top 2 season helped me win that championship within my 3-year window. I went and got my championship and then I lost the quarterback and now I've got to go draft one. I've got to rebuild just the same way I do at running back, but in the meantime, he was getting me over 20 points a game and helped me get that championship. So I think that we just need to take that approach to the quarterback position as well. But I mean, I also fully admit my bias. Aaron Rodgers is just so awesome.
He is. He is.
Did you see him hit that net for like 40, 50 yards in the air?
Like it was nothing. Like it was nothing.
Yeah. Steph Curry hitting the half court shot.
Let's
just like took off his helmet and made a bow, and I don't know who he pointed at, but I'm guessing it was Brian Gutekunst.
Bask in my greatness.
Yeah. Did you see that? Or Jordan Love. Hey.
Yeah, take note.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck making that throw next year, kid. What else do we got? Lamar asks, Eckler plus what equals Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be fair? It's kind of back to it's roughly the same thing, I believe. Let me look at ADP, but I think it's kind of the same type of situation as with Nick Chubb. Who are we just? Oh, and Najee Harris. Very close in ADP. So Austin Eckler going 405, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire going at 501. So a difference of about half a round. And that's close. I mean, I think that they're probably there. I think that it's kind of tier 3 for Austin Eckler and tier 4 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that, if I was trying to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I would probably try and do it for that second round pick again. I try for that minimal, upgrade tax essentially. But I think if I was going to sell Austin Eckler, actually, I've got this whole thing backwards, by the way. I think the plus should be on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that it takes, and ADP kind of pans that out as well. I think it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire plus for Austin Eckler. So yeah, I don't think that you should have to add to Austin Eckler to get to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But just hypothetically, if we are going to add to either side of it, I think that I would try and do it minimally, second round pick, something like that, maybe a bench player with some upside, especially if you've got depth at wide receiver. I hate wide receiver depth. So if you can offload a high upside wide receiver to clear a little bit of bench space and get back the running back that you want, that's a great move right there. But again, back to the original point, I kind of think that you probably are going to need, first round type of rookie value, specifically a first round rookie pick, to really just kind of, just to kick things up and get things moving on a deal like that. Otherwise, there's kind of no reason, to make essentially a lateral move from Austin Eckler to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or, vice versa. There's kind of no reason to for just a second round pick, there's kind of no reason to make a move from one to the other, if we are acknowledging that it's a lateral move.
Those two guys are only 3 points off in the trade analyzer on DLF.
Is that right?
Yep.
So the cool thing is with this analyzer at dynastyleaguefootball.com, the trade analyzer, it also gives you recommendations of how to close that gap. How do they recommend doing it?
It calls it a fair trade, straight up. The only trade involving both guys recently, it was Austin Eckler and Chris Godwin was sent for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Tyler Lockett.
Oh, okay. So again, I mean, I think that, it's kind of the difference between Godwin and Lockett, which probably second rounder.
I like that Eckler side still.
Yeah, me too. I think that you win that one twice personally. Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, it sounds like it's super close on the analyzer, just like it is on ADP. Actually closer on the analyzer than on ADP. Open 24 hours. J.K. Dobbins or Antonio Gibson in a 10-team half PPR SuperFlex league. That I think that half PPR is going to be just enough to make the difference for me, to where I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins for the rushing volume. The pass catching of Antonio Gibson is very appealing in a full PPR. It doesn't make a huge difference in his scoring, but losing that half a point, I think, is enough to. We're really kind of splitting hairs. Again, this is kind of the same as Eckler CEH and Chubb Harris. It's kind of the same thing. You're talking about two guys who are very close in ADP, very close in value. So we're really kind of splitting hairs, and the question becomes, how do you do that? How do you differentiate those two? And I think that that half point that you lose in half PPR as opposed to full PPR is going to be just enough for me to take J.K. Dobbins. Zane. Zane's in 2 of the ADP mocks right now. So he's got a lot of pull in setting up this ADP. He's out there making all kinds of picks.
Is he on the clock?
Oh, he might. I'm probably on the clock. I'm always. I don't get notifications, and it always happens that when I'm trying to podcast or trying to do a live stream, I end up going on the clock, and everyone's like, "Hey, come on, make your pick." All right, Zane says quarterback battles this year: New Orleans, Denver, New England. Who's the better option for fantasy football in 2021? I kind of think that New Orleans probably is the situation you want. Like, if you can get both guys from any one of those situations, I think I want New Orleans. I think, and I mean, this is all predicated on, this is something that we were talking about on Twitter today as well. But the idea that, also mentioned this last week when, we got that news about Michael Thomas with the injury, going to miss, the majority of the season, it sounds like. All of a sudden, to me, Taysom Hill makes the most sense to be the starting quarterback, where I was absolutely convinced it was going to be Jameis Winston. I put it at about a 95% probability that it was going to be Jameis Winston. The second that we found out that Michael Thomas is going to miss most of the season with that injury, it dropped to about a 65% chance, 65% probability that Jameis Winston is a starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And to me, if I was Sean Payton and there's a reason that he's making the money that he is, and I'm, just hanging out in my basement on a Friday night, talking SuperFlex with my super friends. But if it was me, if I was Sean Payton, I would have done a complete 180 right at that moment. I would have said Taysom Hill is the guy who covers up the blemish that we've got in this wide receiving core. The playmaking abilities of Taysom Hill makes it easier for us to move the ball in a variety of ways. Jameis Winston, as athletic as he is, he's still more of a conventional pocket passer. Conventional isn't a word that we normally use with Jameis Winston. 30 interceptions is far from conventional. But in terms of just kind of standing in the pocket, throwing the ball, he is accurate. He's got a strong arm. He just makes bad decisions. But he's more of a pocket passer. And if you don't have weapons for him to throw to, you don't want a guy just kind of standing in the pocket. You want the mobility. You want the playmaking ability of Taysom Hill. That's going to set up, it's going to set up the pass a lot better when you do have to respect and honor the fact that he can take off and run. He can extend a play, or he can just take off and gain positive yardage. So to me, the right call here should be Taysom Hill starts until they get that wide receiver core fixed, maybe even get Michael Thomas back healthy. Then you switch to Jameis Winston. Start with Taysom Hill, then switch to Jameis Winston. I don't know that they're going to do it that way, but that makes the most sense. And for that reason, I think I would go with those two, just because I think that you get the most upside from the quarterback position based on, who's starting and why that guy is starting. I do think that Locke and Bridgewater, I think that really is a pretty good, for fantasy purposes, I think that's a good situation. But I mean, great weapons everywhere. Those guys, though, they're really going to kind of be asked to manage the game. They've got the defense to be competitive. That's one of the top 3 defenses in the league. I know that I'm biased, Bronco fan over here. I get that, but if you've got one of those leagues that still uses the team defense, the DST position, the Denver Broncos, I think you're going to want them. But anyways, I think that they're going to try and win a lot of games with defense. I think that they're really kind of only asking for, about 24 points a game from the offense. And I think that, from there, I think that the defense is just going to be able to take it over against most teams. So, I think that the upside is really kind of limited for those two quarterbacks. So, and then New England is a really hard one for me, just because to me, there's no good segue from one to the other. You know what I mean? They're so different. Those two quarterbacks are so different that if you were to switch from one to the other, you're almost asking your entire offense to learn a whole new system. You go from that run heavy approach with Cam Newton, the high percentage passing and the the shorter passing, the low ADOT essentially. I think you see a lot of that from Cam Newton, and then lots of taking off and running. The offensive line never knows where the hell he's going to be. Wide receivers, you when you have to break off your route and just kind of try and help get your quarterback out of trouble. I mean, they're going to be doing a lot of that. There's not going to be a whole lot of timing patterns because you run the route that was designed for you, and then you turn and look, and Cam Newton's off and running, and you've got to try and shift, to his side of the field, try and get open for him to have a safety valve. So you go from that to the pocket presence of Mac Jones. It's just two totally different systems, and I don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense to go from one to the other. I think you commit to one guy for the entire season, either way, whether it's Cam Newton or Mac Jones. I think that you really kind of commit to that guy for the entire season. That's what makes the most sense. But again, that's kind of the key word, the key term here, the key phrase is that makes the most sense. Is that what always happens? No. I'm kind of going off of probability, I guess. I'm kind of saying this is what, again, just logically, this is what makes sense to me. Is that what they're going to do? Probably not. But I just, maybe I've got a little too much faith in these NFL coaches still. Zane says, when do you think Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones become starters in 2021? Any of them have to wait until 2022? I think Mac Jones is the most likely to wait until 2022. Like I said, if he doesn't win the job outright, I don't think that we see him until the very end of 2021 and possibly in into 2022. Kind of a Pat Mahomes type of scenario. Trey Lance, I think, has the best chance to win the job from day one, especially the reports that we're hearing in training camp right now. I mean, he's just lighting it up. I don't know how Jimmy Garoppolo competes with that. Justin Fields is probably the least likely to start from day one, but I still think you're going to see him on the field fairly early in the season. I would put the over under at about 7 weeks. And I think I might still bet the under, to be honest with you. I think you're going to see Justin Fields, before the midpoint of the season. What else we got, Captain? Is that it? That's it just right now. Do we knock them all out? I know Justin Sullivan was doing some trash talking on me earlier, but is that
I think you talked about Josh Allen's contract too much. He might be taking a nap.
Oh. Well, he asked, all right, here we go. Be honest. How many times a week do you have to explain that the 5 quarterback head count in QBX doesn't mean you take 5 straight quarterbacks in your startup? Yeah, like that's all I do, honestly. I need to get tattooed on my forehead. Just yeah. QBX does not mean 5 straight quarterbacks. It does not mean 5 straight quarterbacks. I just need to like get it on a recorder and just like play it on a loop, just kind of walking around and just have it playing around me, just so everybody knows, Because it gets super frustrating, man. People still assign that to me even after I tell them otherwise. Even after I tell them, yeah, it's not 5 straight. It's 5 total through, 10 rounds essentially. But no, I would never go 5 straight quarterbacks at any point. I mean, the rest of your roster suffers way too much. So, I end up explaining that all the time. That's for damn sure. All right, I thought he was trash talking me, but yeah, that's he was actually setting me up there. He's teeing that up for me. I appreciate that.
What are you doing with some of these older guys? Like, Brady is going to be valuable to contenders.
Yeah.
And so if you're a middle of the road team and you've got a room with Rodgers, Allen, Russell Wilson, and Brady, say that's your quarterback room. Where do you look to capitalize? Do you try and sell off one of the younger guys and get more for it and ride Brady into the sunset? Or what do you think you get for Brady these days?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'll start with, to me, the whole premise in SuperFlex. A starting NFL quarterback should be worth a second round or worth a first round rookie pick. And the idea being, I mean, you even think about this year, deep rookie class, right? You've got Mac Jones is kind of the last of the 5 quarterbacks going in the first round who are, likely NFL starters. He's still going, towards the end of the first round. So by 112, Mac Jones is off the board, and now you have no way of replacing a starting quarterback with a first round pick, with pick 112 anyways. So like it starts with that. It starts with the idea that, 112, I would trade away 112 to get Ryan Fitzpatrick. I would trade away 112 to get whoever wins the job between, Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, because I'm not going to be able to use that pick to replace them. So yeah, I mean, just right off the top, I think they're worth a first. And then from there, I think that honestly, Brady is safer than Mac Jones. He's safer than Zach Wilson. Those guys should be fine. They should have long careers. But in all honesty, I mean, it sounds like we're getting another year or 2 from Brady. He's planning on 2 more this season and next season. Can you guarantee me that any of those rookie quarterbacks are going to give us 2 seasons? I mean, they should, but will they necessarily? Nah, it's possible for them to bust out. So
for every Josh Allen, there's a Josh Rosen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, the probability says, because that happens every season. We have some first round guys who are awesome, and we have some first round guys who bust. The probability says that at least 2 of these rookie quarterbacks are going to bust, unfortunately. I don't particularly want to guess at who they're going to be anymore, because I feel I like all of them. I'm not a huge fan of Mac Jones, but I think I think he's in a system that's not going to be not going to let him fail. So, but yeah, probability says one of those guys is going to bust. You're kind of better off trading one of those mid first round picks instead of spending it on Zach Wilson or Mac Jones. You're really kind of better off spending that pick, trading that pick for Tom Brady. I know that's not going to sit well with people. You're getting a more solid return with Tom Brady than you are making that pick. So, I think that would be my asking price. What I will say is I think that here in August, it's really hard to know if we're going to be contenders or not. So I really try and get people to shy away from committing right now to a rebuild type of season, or, calling themselves a contender and going all in. We see it all the time where, last year, if you had done an auction, you did a startup auction, and you ended up spending 50% of your budget and you got Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. Everybody was going into the season saying he's going to run the table. Like, that combination of running backs is unfreaking beatable, right? And then you lose Saquon Barkley early in the season. You had Christian McCaffrey for 4 or 5 games throughout the season, and the rest of it you probably got your ass kicked, pretty consistently. So we never know. So I would be very hesitant to sell Tom Brady unless I can get that like early mid first round type of rookie value, kind of regardless of what my team audit what that shows. I would be, if I feel like I've got running back depth, if I feel like I've got locked in starters at wide receiver, if I feel like I've got premiums covered, if there's a tight end premium and I've got somebody with a top 5 type upside, and I've got some quarterback depth, even if they're not all a bunch of stud guys, even if it's not a sexy roster, if I've got the right mix, I'm sticking with it. I'm holding on to Brady and I'm making a run at it just in case, So, yeah, it really kind of depends on the roster build. And then from there, it depends on the offer. If I can get that type of value for Tom Brady, and it's going to be hard to do, but if I can get that type of value for Tom Brady, I would do it.
Right
on. Guillermo said, am I all right with Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, and Taylor Heineke in my Dynasty League? Mostly, yeah. I think that if you were to trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick just to lock up that football team quarterback position, so you've got Fitzpatrick to start, and then if he comes off the field for Heineke, you still have the starter for that team. With those 4 guys, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's not a sexy group, but it's the numbers. The probability says that most weeks you're going to have somebody in a good matchup. One of those 4 guys is going to be in a good matchup most weeks. And another one of the 4 should be in a decent matchup. So that's where 4 is just a little light for me for quarterback extreme. I still want that 5th one just to help, so I still have that probability even during bye weeks. But yeah, I even with 4, first of all, you're going to have a quarterback at SuperFlex at all times. That's a prerequisite to compete, to contend. And then from there, yeah, you're more times than not, you're going to have, most weeks, you're going to have at least one quarterback in a great matchup who's going to, raise the upside of your lineup. So yeah, it doesn't have to be studs. Like I said, I start early just because that's what it takes to get to that number without just going heavy at quarterback at any point. It's not about getting the elite guys, because these guys, this list of guys here, Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, and then the starting quarterback for a Washington football team, that can win a championship. With the right management, you can absolutely win a championship with that group of guys. You don't have to have Pat Mahomes and Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. You don't have to have those guys. You just have to have quarterbacks in good matchups at the right times. That's all it really takes. That feels like a good place to go ahead, man.
It's nothing important. I was just saying, I feel like with the Washington football team, I keep hearing you say it this episode, and I feel like we really had a missed opportunity, because the Washington monuments would have been epic.
Oh man, Yeah, but then what happens when now they've got to change their name again when it becomes too phallic?
Right.
Like, man, that's a little bit too aggressively testosterone charged.
Touche.
Especially when you put that on the side of their helmets. Eesh.
Oh, could you imagine the helmet logos for that?
Yeah.
Goodness.
I know. Yeah. You'd almost have to make it into a anyways. Trying to keep this one PG, Captain.
Take it away, John.
Definitely a good time to wrap it up. I think that we probably had a much better cutoff point before that one, but yeah, we is what it is. That's what happens when you go live. That's what happens when you go live, and that's what happens when you've got the Captain Redbeard.
Wild card.
Is a producer of the wild card, yes. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. Really appreciate it. We'll do it again next week, obviously. Every Friday night is SuperFlex Super Friday. I'm going to do I want to do my normal sign off here for the SuperFlex Super Show. Because like I said, I'm going to put this on the SuperFlex Super Show podcast feed as well. Just so everybody listening to the podcast who did not tune into the show knows what they're missing, and you can come join us next week in the conversation among super friends on a SuperFlexy SuperFlex Super Friday night. So let's wrap it up there. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Subscribe to the DLF family of podcast mega feed. Subscribe to this DLF YouTube channel so you never miss the reminders to tune in to the live shows. Do us a huge favor if you would. Rate and review the SuperFlex Super Show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Helps us to get out to more people and touch on more topics that are useful to you, our super friends. And even better, come join us live here on the YouTube channel every Friday night. That's where we can really touch on the topics that are useful to you, our super friends. Get at us on Twitter. Just get to me individually at SuperFlexDude on Twitter. AJ is at Captain at CAPT Redbeard. What is it, 86?
CPT Redbeard 57.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Someday, I have no idea how. Someday I'll get that memorized for you. I'll work on it. Yeah, get to us individually. Always happy to answer mentions or DMs, discuss SuperFlex strategy, trades, retweet trade polls, whatever you got. Always happy to talk SuperFlex in whatever forum we've got. This episode was dedicated in loving memory to James the Brain Catullus. Thank you to DLF for the platform. Thank you to Heart and Soul Radio for the music. And above all else, thank you for listening. And until next week, stay sexy and super flexy.